Hey guys, tonight we are going to gently float down the Nile, but we're going past the usual stops. We're heading south, deep into a land the Egyptians both feared and admired, a place of gold, iron, and powerful queens, the Kingdom of Kush. Now, a quick heads up, you are completely unprepared for this journey. You have no resistance to local waterborne microbes. Your modern clothes are laughably impractical for the heat, and you can't tell a friendly Kushite merchant from a very hungry crocodile. You probably wouldn't survive this for more than a day, which is precisely why we're doing it from the safety of our beds. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And in the comments, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. It's always fascinating to see this sleepy community stretch across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The journey begins on water. You are reclining on the deck of a wide, sturdy-looking cargo boat, its single sail full of a warm, steady breeze pushing you south. The planks beneath you are smooth from years of use, warmed by a sun that feels ancient and heavy. This isn't a royal barge. There are no gilded canopies or teams of rowers. Instead, there are clay jars filled with wine and oil lashed to the deck, their surfaces cool to the touch. The crew, a handful of quiet Kushite sailors, move with an unhurried grace, their dark skin gleaming with a light sheen of sweat. The only sounds are the gentle creak of the mast, the soft lapping of water against the hull, and the occasional sigh from the man steering with a long oar-like rudder. There's no Lido deck, no buffet, just the quiet understanding that you don't trail your fingers in the water. You are moving upstream, deeper into the heart of Africa. The familiar monumental landscapes of Lower Egypt are far behind you now. The Great Pyramids of Giza have long since shrunk into the haze of the northern horizon, and the grand temples of Karnak and Luxor are a distant memory. You've passed the first cataract at Aswan, a series of churning rapids and rocky outcrops that served for centuries as the traditional southern border of Egypt. It's a natural barrier, a place where the Nile's calm, predictable demeanor gives way to something wilder. Crossing it feels less like a geographical change and more like a shift in consciousness. You have left one world and are now entering another. The very air feels different here. In what the Egyptians called Nubia, the intense, dry heat is the same, but the light has a softer, golden quality. The riverbanks are changing too. The dense green strips of papyrus reeds are becoming sparser, giving way to groves of thorny acacia trees and dom palms with their distinctive, fan-like fronds. The limestone cliffs that lined the river in Egypt have been replaced by dramatic formations of dark granite and reddish-brown sandstone. They rise from the water's edge like ancient, sleeping beasts. Every so often, you catch sight of a small settlement, a cluster of round, mud-brick houses with thatched roofs, so different from the rectangular homes you remember from the north. Smoke curls lazily into the blue sky. The people you see on the banks are taller, their features distinct. They wave, not with the deference you might see in an Egyptian province, but with a casual, confident curiosity. For centuries, the Egyptians had a name for this place, Tasseti, the land of the bow. This wasn't an insult. It was a mark of deep respect for the legendary skill of Nubian archers, whose prowess in battle was known throughout the ancient world. They were sought-after mercenaries, feared opponents, and for a time, even the pharaohs of Egypt themselves, looking at the lean, strong figures on the shore. You can understand why. Your vessel is part of a small flotilla of similar boats, all laden with goods, heading for the Kushite capital. It's a slow-moving supply chain, the lifeblood of a kingdom that controls the trade routes between the Mediterranean world and the heart of Africa. Historians still wonder about the precise nature of the cultural exchange here. Was it a one-way street, with Egyptian culture flowing south? Or did Kushite ideas flow just as powerfully north, quietly shaping the kingdom that thought it was the center of the world? It's a question that hangs in the quiet air as your boat drifts onward. The sun begins its slow descent, painting the western sky in shades of orange and violet. The captain points ahead, toward a bend in the river. He says nothing, but his gesture is clear. The capital, Meroë, is close. You can't see it yet, but you feel a sense of anticipation humming through the boat. A quiet energy that cuts through the sleepy rhythm of the river. The day's journey is ending, but the real story is just about to begin. Asterisk, as the boat navigates the wide, slow curve of the river, the air begins to change. The clean, dry scent of the desert is gradually replaced by something more complex. A hazy plume of smoke hangs over the eastern bank, glowing faintly in the twilight. It carries on the breeze, a smell you can't quite place at first, not just the familiar aroma of wood smoke from cooking fires, but something sharper, more industrial. It's the scent of burning charcoal and a faint, metallic Thames, like the air after a lightning strike. The hum you felt earlier is now a low, distant thrum, a sound of rhythmic hammering that seems to emanate from the very earth. There's no welcome banner, no grand procession. The city announces itself not with trumpets, but with the scent of industry. Asterisk then, you see it, Meroë. It doesn't burst into view with the theatrical grandeur of an Egyptian capital. Instead, it seems to grow organically from the landscape, perched on a sort of island between the Nile proper and a seasonal river. The city is a sprawling collection of structures that rise above a formidable brick wall. You can make out the tops of temple pylons and the flat roofs of large palatial buildings, but they seem nestled within the city, not set apart from it. They're built from the local reddish sandstone, and in the fading light, they almost blend into the earth tones of the surrounding savanna. It feels less like a monument and more like a massive living settlement. Asterisk, what truly catches your eye, however, are the strange, unnatural hills that flank the city to the east. They are dark, almost black, and they glitter in the last rays of the sun. They aren't natural formations. They are enormous mounds of industrial waste, the accumulated slag from centuries of iron smelting. This is the physical evidence of Meroë's power. The kingdom's wealth wasn't just built on gold from the southern mines. It was forged in fire for hundreds of years. This city was one of the most important centers for ironworking in the ancient world, earning it the nickname the Birmingham of ancient Africa among modern archaeologists. Looking at those dark, shimmering hills, you realize that urban pollution isn't a modern invention. It seems early cities didn't have much in the way of zoning regulations either. Asterisk, this location, so far south, wasn't always the heart of the Kushite kingdom. For centuries, the capital was a city called Napata, located further north, closer to the Egyptian border. It was from Napata that the great Kushite king Pi launched his conquest of Egypt, establishing the 25th dynasty, where black pharaohs ruled a unified kingdom of the two lands. But power is a fragile thing. In 593 BCE, an Egyptian army marched south and sacked Napata, a brutal act of retribution. This event is a widely accepted historical fact, a turning point that forced the Kushite rulers to retreat and regroup. They moved their political and spiritual center here to Meroë. Asterisk, this is where the quiet debate among historians begins. Was the move purely a strategic retreat? A simple case of putting more distance and difficult terrain between themselves and their aggressive northern neighbors? Or was it something more? Meroë was better positioned to control the increasingly lucrative trade routes that led east to the Red Sea and south into the heart of Africa, a world of ivory, ebony, and exotic animals that the Mediterranean craved. Furthermore, the land around Napata was becoming deforested. The forests surrounding Meroë, however, were vast, providing a seemingly endless supply of wood to fuel the furnaces that created those slag heaps, sand the kingdom's wealth. So, were they running away from Egypt? Or were they running toward a new, more African-focused future? The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Asterisk, as your boat glides closer to a long stone quay, the scale of the city becomes more apparent. The walls are thick and high, constructed from dark red, fire-baked bricks. Dozens of other boats are moored here, unloading everything from amphorae of wine to blocks of salt and bundles of animal hides. The soft lapping of the river is now drowned out by a symphony of city sounds, voices calling out in the unfamiliar, melodic tones of the Meroitic language, the bleating of goats and the braying of donkeys, and that persistent, rhythmic clang of hammer on anvil, the city's very heartbeat. The sun has finally dipped below the horizon, and torches are being lit along the quay, their flickering flames casting long, dancing shadows. A sailor uncoils a thick rope and tosses it to a man on the dock. With a gentle bump, your journey on the water is over. You stand up, your legs a little unsteady, and prepare to step onto the solid ground of the Kushite capital, the warm, vibrant energy of Meroë pulling you forward into the growing darkness. Stepping off the boat is like plunging into a current of warm air thick with new smells and sounds. The stone under your feet is still warm from the day's sun, a comforting solidity after the gentle sway of the river. The air is a rich tapestry of scents. The sharp, almost acrid smell of the iron forges you noted from the river is now mixed with the sweet perfume of roasting dates, the earthy scent of livestock, and the savory aroma of grilling fish. It's overwhelming, but not unpleasant, the smell of a city that is alive and working, even as night falls. The torches along the dock cast everything in a dramatic, flickering chiaroscuro, making ordinary faces seem mysterious and familiar shapes seem strange. You feel a bit like you've walked onto a movie set, except the smells are real and the ground is uneven. Asterisk, you follow the flow of people moving from the docks into the city proper, a diverse crowd that speaks to Meroë's position as a crossroads. There are Kushite sailors and soldiers, their features noble and distinct, some with intricate scarification patterns on their cheeks. You see traders with the lighter skin and curled beards of the Greco-Roman world, gesturing emphatically as they haggle with local merchants. There are desert nomads wrapped in dark-dyed cloths, their eyes sharp and watchful, leading camels laden with sacks of salt. And then there are people from even further south, their skin darker, their clothing and jewelry unlike anything you've seen before. The Meroitic language is the dominant sound, a fluid, musical tongue, but it's peppered with snippets of Egyptian, Greek, and other, stranger languages. You don't understand a word, but you can read the universal language of commerce in their gestures and expressions. Asterisk, the path from the quay leads you through a massive gateway in the city wall. The sheer thickness of the baked brick fortifications is impressive. This was a city built to withstand a siege, a constant reminder of the past conflict with Egypt and the ever-present need for security. Once inside, the city opens up into a network of streets that are less a grid and more a web. They aren't wide paved boulevards, but rather winding, unpaved lanes of packed earth. The main thoroughfares are wide enough for a cart or a camel train, but many of the side streets are little more than narrow alleys. Buildings are packed tightly together, their mud brick and sandstone walls creating canyons that trap the day's heat. Asterisk. The architecture is a fascinating hybrid. You see buildings that are clearly inspired by Egyptian models' houses with flat roofs and small, high windows to keep out the sun. But there are also round huts with conical thatched roofs, a style of building that is distinctly African and far better suited to shedding the seasonal rains that fall here. Unlike in arid Egypt, this fusion is a core part of Kushite identity. For centuries, they had absorbed and adapted Egyptian culture, religion, and art, but they never simply copied it. They remixed it, blended it with their own indigenous traditions to create something entirely new and unique. The city of Meroë itself is the ultimate expression of this cultural fusion. One widely accepted fact is that the Kingdom of Kush, especially in its Meroitic period, acted as a vital bridge between the Mediterranean world and sub-Saharan Africa, a role that made it incredibly wealthy and culturally dynamic. Asterisk, as you wander deeper into the city, you pass the source of that rhythmic hammering. Through a wide open doorway, you see the fiery orange glow of a forge. Inside, half-naked men, their bodies slick with sweat, are pulling incandescent chunks of iron from a charcoal-fired furnace. With powerful, coordinated blows, they hammer the glowing metal into shaped plowshares, spearheads, axes. The heat pouring from the doorway is immense, and the sound is deafening up close. It's a vision of primal industry, the engine room of the Kushite kingdom. A quirky, lesser-known detail that archaeologists have uncovered is the sheer scale of this production. The iron slag heaps surrounding Meroë are estimated to contain the waste from producing tens of thousands of tons of iron, a level of output unparalleled in Africa at the time. They were, quite literally, fueling an iron age. Asterisk, you continue walking, letting the crowd guide you. The initial sensory overload is beginning to fade, replaced by a sense of wonder. You notice small details. A woman grinding sorghum in a stone quern in her doorway. The rhythmic scrape a comforting sound. Children chasing a small, scruffy dog down an alley, their laughter echoing off the walls. A man sitting on a low stool, meticulously carving a piece of wood. It's easy to think of ancient cities as just collections of ruins and monuments, but they were living, breathing places, filled with people going about their lives, with all the same small joys, annoyances, and routines as our own. Historians still wonder about the social structure within a city like this. How did the elite, the merchants, the artisans, and the farmers interact? Were the different quarters of the city segregated by class or profession? The layout of Meroë, with its jumbled, organic feel, suggests a more integrated society than we might expect, but the silent stones hold their secrets close. The path ahead begins to widen, and the buildings become larger, more formal. The noise of the forges recedes, replaced by a more subdued, respectful murmur. You are approaching the heart of the city, the royal quarter. Asterisk, the transition is subtle, but unmistakable. The packed earth lanes give way to a wider avenue, paved with large, flat slabs of sandstone that have been worn smooth by countless feet and chariot wheels over centuries. The air here feels cleaner, free from the industrial haze of the forges and the dense smells of the market. The buildings are no longer the tightly packed jumble of houses and workshops, but larger, more imposing structures set back from the road behind low walls. These are the administrative buildings, the homes of high officials, and the residences of the powerful priesthood. There's a palpable sense of order and quiet authority in this part of the city. The chaotic, vibrant energy of the commercial district has been replaced by a low, respectful hum. Asterisk, you notice a change in the people around you as well. The diverse mix of traders and laborers has thinned out, replaced by individuals who carry themselves with a certain gravity. You see scribes in clean linen kilts, clutching palettes and brushes. Priests with shaved heads, their faces serene and impassive. And guards, tall and broad-shouldered, standing at attention by ornate doorways. They aren't the regular city watch. These soldiers are an elite corps, their kilts adorned with colored leather, their spear tips gleaming even in the torchlight. They watch you pass not with overt suspicion, but with a calm, professional assessment that makes you instinctively straighten your posture. It's the ancient equivalent of walking past a government building and feeling the silent gaze of security cameras. Asterisk, ahead of you, bathed in the soft glow of numerous oil lamps, lies the royal enclosure. It's not a single, monolithic palace in the style of Versailles or the Forbidden City. Instead, it's a vast, sprawling complex of palaces, temples, audience halls, gardens, and even a set of what archaeologists have identified as Roman baths. a clear sign of Meroë's cosmopolitan connections. The entire complex is surrounded by a high, thick wall of its own, a city within a city. The main entrance is flanked by two massive stone pylons, reminiscent of an Egyptian temple, but the carvings that adorn them are distinctly instead of serene, muscular pharaohs smiting their enemies. You see powerful, full-figured queens, their authority absolute. This is the domain of the Kandakes. The term, often Latinized as Candace, is not a personal name, but a title, meaning something akin to Queen Mother or Great Queen. It was a title passed down through a line of formidable women who ruled the Kingdom of Kush for generations. This is one of the most remarkable and widely accepted facts about Meroitic society, the centrality of female power. While women in the Greco-Roman world were largely relegated to the domestic sphere, the Kandakes of Kush were commanders of armies, builders of temples, and the ultimate political authority. They weren't just queen's consort or regents ruling on behalf of a young son. They were monarchs in their own right. You pause before the Great Gateway, looking up at the relief. The figures of the Kandakes are depicted as larger than life, a common artistic convention to denote importance. They wear elaborate headdresses, incorporating symbols of both Egyptian and Kushite royalty, and their jewelry is heavy and ornate, signifying immense wealth. But it's their depiction that is so striking. They are not portrayed with the idealized, slender figures of Egyptian queens like Nefertiti. The Kandakes are shown as strong, powerful women with broad hips and strong shoulders, a celebration of might and fecundity. A lesser-known detail is that the succession in Kush was often matrilineal, meaning the right to rule passed through the queen's line. The next king would not be the current king's son, but rather the son of his sister, the Kandak's son. This ensured that power remained concentrated within a specific royal maternal lineage, placing the queen mother at the absolute center of the dynastic web. You find a place to sit on a low stone bench, set against the enclosure wall, partially hidden by the deep shadows of an acacia tree. From here, you can observe the comings and goings at a smaller, less formal gate into the royal complex. This isn't the grand ceremonial entrance, but a side door for couriers, officials, and petitioners. It's here, in the quiet, everyday transactions of power, that you can truly sense the influence of the Kandake. The guards at this gate are different. They are women, tall, poised, and armed with short spears. They exude an air of unshakable competence. They aren't just ceremonial. They are clearly professional soldiers, and they answer to the queen. An official arrives, a man in his middle years with a weary but important air about him. He presents a clay tablet to one of the guards. She doesn't just glance at it. She reads the cuneiform script with a practiced eye, asks a short, sharp question, and listens intently to his response. Only then does she nod and grant him entry. A few moments later, a young priest approaches, seeking an audience. He is turned away with a polite but firm shake of the head. There is no argument, no pleading. The guard's decision is final. The authority here is absolute and quietly enforced. It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes about the structure of this court. This scene gives you a glimpse into the concept of the Queen Mother's role. In many societies, the king's mother was a respected figure, but often one whose power was indirect, exercised through her influence over her son. Here in Kush, the position was formalized and central to the state. The Kandake was the vessel of royal legitimacy. A widely accepted historical fact is that the Meroitic succession was, for long periods, the royal blood or legitimacy passed through the woman. The king, the core, ruled, but he often derived his right to the throne from his relationship to the Kandake, who was typically his mother. She was the living link to the dynasty's divine past, and the guarantor of its future. This system had a profound effect on the stability of the kingdom. While other empires were frequently torn apart by succession crises, with brothers murdering brothers for a chance at the throne, The Kushite system provided a clear and orderly line of succession. The next king would be the son of the reigning queen's sister, a nephew rather than a son. This not only clarified who was next in line, but also likely reduced internal family strife. There was little point in a king's son plotting to seize power, as he had no legitimate claim. This structure made the Kandakes quarters the very enclosure you're sitting outside of the true political center of the kingdom. It was from here that the future of the dynasty was decided. You observe another figure arriving at the gate. This is an older woman, her hair intricately braided with gold threads. She isn't a royal, but she carries herself with the dignity of someone of high status. She is greeted with deep respect by the guards and ushered inside without question. Perhaps she is a priestess or a wise woman, one of the Kandakes' trusted advisors. A lesser-known detail about the court of the Kandakes is that it was likely a significant center for female education and administration, in order to manage the vast temple estates and royal treasuries under their control. The Kandake and her retinue would need to be literate, numerate, and politically astute. This suggests the existence of a highly educated class of elite women scribes, administrators, and priestesses who formed the backbone of the queen's power structure. It's a stark contrast to the contemporary Roman world, where a woman like Livia could wield immense influence, but always from behind the scenes, never as a recognized political entity in her own right. As you sit in the growing quiet of the night, you begin to understand the Kandakes' power not as a fluke of history or the result of a few exceptional individuals, but as a deeply embedded, structural component of Kushite society. It was a system that valued the stability and continuity that came from matrilineal descent over the patriarchal ambitions that so often fractured other empires. Historians still wonder about the early origins of this system. Was it a remnant of a much older, pre-dynastic African tradition? Or did it evolve specifically within the Kushite royal family as a way to distinguish themselves from their Egyptian-influenced northern neighbors and assert a unique cultural identity? The answer is likely lost to time, buried deep in the centuries before Meroë became the capital. For now, the soft sounds of the court, the quiet authority of the female guards, and the very walls of the enclosure seem to hum with this unique and enduring legacy of female power. The air is still, and a sense of deep, ancient order settles over you, a quiet reassurance that power can have many faces, and that a queen's authority can be as strong and silent as the stone on which her palace is built. As the night deepens, the traffic to and from the royal gate dwindles to almost nothing. The city's rhythmic hammering has long since fallen silent, replaced by the chirping of insects and the distant barking of a dog. The air is cool and pleasant. A young guard, perhaps bored on the late watch, begins to quietly hum a tune, a simple, haunting melody. Another soldier, seated on a low stool, is sharpening the edge of his spear with a whetstone, the soft, rhythmic shishi sound oddly soothing. It's in these quiet, unguarded moments that stories are often shared. You imagine leaning back against the cool stone, an invisible listener, as one of the guards begins to speak in a low voice, telling a tale not from a history scroll, but from living memory, passed down through generations. The story is of the one who came before, the greatest of the Kandakes, the one whose name is still spoken with a mixture of awe and reverence. The name itself has a weight to it. The tale begins, not here in Meroë, but in the tense years following Rome's conquest of Egypt in 30 BCE. The world had a new master, a relentless, ever-expanding empire that saw the wealthy Kingdom of Kush to the south not as an equal, but as the next logical prize. The Romans, under their first prefect of Egypt, Gaius Cornelius Gallus, pushed south, claiming a region known as the Triac, a strip of land that Kush had long considered part of its northern territory. To the Romans, it was just another frontier to be secured. To the Kushites, it was an intolerable provocation. This is where Kandakes enters the story. The historical fact is that in 24 BCE, she led her Kushite army north in a swift and devastating counterattack, while the new Roman prefect, Aelius Gallus, was away on a campaign in Arabia. The Kushite forces swept into the Roman-held cities of Aswan, Phale, and Elephantine. They overwhelmed the Roman garrisons, tore down the statues of the Emperor Augustus, and, in a moment of supreme defiance, took the bronze head from one of these statues back to Meroë as a trophy. It's an act of incredible audacity, a small kingdom directly challenging the might of the world's greatest superpower. The storyteller's voice would drop lower here, describing Aemonarinas herself. She was not a young queen. By this time, she was likely in her 40s, a mature and experienced ruler, and, according to the Greek geographer Strabo, who wrote about this conflict, she was a masculine sort of woman and blind in one eye. This detail, of the one-eyed warrior queen, is what cements her legend. It's a striking, unforgettable image. He describes how she lost her eye in battle, a testament to the fact that she didn't lead from a comfortable palace in the rear, but from the front lines. Alongside her soldiers, this portrayal, even from a Roman sympathetic source, paints a picture of a formidable and personally courageous leader. Of course, Rome could not let such an insult stand. The new prefect, Gaius Petronius, marched south with 2 legions, around 10,000 men, to exact revenge. He retook the cities and pushed deep into Kushite territory, eventually sacking the old capital of Nepal. On paper, it looks like a decisive Roman victory, but the story doesn't end there. Aemonarinas and her forces had simply retreated, melting into the vastness of the land. Avoiding a pitched battle they knew they couldn't win, they began a campaign of guerrilla warfare, harassing Roman supply lines, launching surprise raids. The Romans could occupy a city, but they couldn't subdue a kingdom. Herein lies a lesser-known and debated part of the story, the peace treaty. After years of inconclusive, draining conflict, something remarkable happened. In 21 BCE, Kushite envoys sent by Kandakes Aemonarinas traveled all the way to the Greek island of Samos, where the Emperor Augustus himself was holding court. They didn't come as defeated supplicants. They came to negotiate, and Augustus, the most powerful man in the world, listened. The resulting treaty was astonishingly favorable to Kush. The Romans agreed to pull back to their original border, effectively surrendering the territory they had initially seized. They also appear to have granted the Kushites tax-exempt status. It was, for all intents and purposes, a diplomatic victory for Historians still wonder what prompted this. Was Augustus simply pragmatic, realizing that the cost of conquering and holding this vast, difficult territory far outweighed any potential gain? Or were the Kushite ambassadors acting on their queen's instructions? Such skilled diplomats that they managed to out-negotiate the emperor himself. Perhaps the Romans were just genuinely tired of being beaten by a one-eyed queen. The first hints of dawn are beginning to lighten the eastern sky, turning it from inky black to a deep, velvety blue. The city is still mostly asleep, but you can hear the first stirrings of life: a distant rooster crowing, the creak of a wooden door. Instead of waiting for the sun to rise, you decide to walk, letting your feet lead you back towards the commercial heart of the city. The air is at its coolest now, and a gentle breeze carries the clean, earthy smell of the surrounding savanna. As you leave the quiet grandeur of the royal district behind, the streets become narrower again, and the scent of industry, though dormant, still hangs faintly in the air. Your path takes you towards a large, open square that was dark and mostly empty when you first arrived. Now, in the pre-dawn light, it's slowly coming to life. This is one of Meroë's main markets. Men are setting up simple wooden stalls, unrolling straw mats on the ground, and arranging their goods with a practiced, unhurried efficiency. The first few customers are already milling about, inspecting produce and haggling in low, sleepy tones. This is where the abstract idea of Kushite wealth becomes tangible, where the raw materials that fuel the kingdom's power are laid bare. Asterisk. You drift towards a section of the market that gleams with a soft, warm light. Here, merchants are displaying the source of Kush's most ancient fame, gold. It's not in the form of coins or standardized bars. Instead, you see it in small leather pouches, filled with glittering gold dust. You see it as raw, lumpy nuggets. Their surface is dull until they catch the light just right. And you see it worked into beautiful, intricate jewelry-heavy earrings, broad collars, and delicate filigree bracelets. The craftsmanship is extraordinary, a blend of Egyptian techniques and distinctly Kushite motifs. This gold is a widely accepted historical fact as the bedrock of Nubian wealth for millennia. It was this resource that first drew the attention of the Egyptian pharaohs, who launched countless expeditions south to control the gold mines of Wate and Kush. The hieroglyphic symbol for gold, Nabiu, is thought by some to be the origin of the name Nubia itself, the land of gold. Asterisk, but as you look around the market, you'll realize that gold is only part of the story. A few stalls down, a smith is laying out his wares. These aren't luxury goods. They are the tools of daily life and the instruments of war. There are sturdy iron hoe blades, essential for farming the fertile lands along the Nile. There are sharp axe heads, used for clearing acacia wood to fuel the furnaces. And there are piles of wicked-looking iron spearheads and short, broad-bladed daggers. This is the other pillar of Meroë's power, the resource that gave them their industrial edge, while the rest of the Nile Valley was still heavily reliant on bronze. The Kushites had mastered iron, producing it on a massive scale. Those dark, glittering slag heaps you saw from the river are the silent testament to this industrial might. This iron didn't just give them better tools and weapons. It gave them economic independence and military security. Asterisk. Wandering further, you find goods that speak of Meroë's role as a continental hub. A merchant, his skin chapped from the desert sun, sits beside large rough-hewn blocks of salt, a precious commodity brought by camel caravans from remote desert oases. Another stall is piled high with elephant tusks, their smooth ivory surfaces gleaming in the low light. Next to them are bundles of dark, fragrant ebony wood and stacks of ostrich feathers, prized by the Romans for their military standards and by the wealthy for their fans. A lesser-known detail that archaeologists have found evidence for is the trade in exotic animals. It's believed that Meroë was a key staging point for capturing and exporting giraffes, cheetahs, and monkeys, destined for the private menageries of Roman aristocrats and the brutal spectacles of the Colosseum. The thought is a little sad, a reminder of the often cruel demands of the luxury market. Asterisk. This vast network of trade routes is what made the Meroitic period of Kush so uniquely prosperous. Historians still wonder about the extent of their eastern trade. Evidence suggests active trade links from the Nile, overland, to ports on the Red Sea, connecting Kush to the maritime trade routes of the Indian Ocean. Did Kushite ships sail alongside those from Arabia and India? Did goods and ideas from as far away as the Indian subcontinent make their way into the heart of Meroë? The presence of Indian cotton textiles and carnelian beads in Kushite tombs suggests they did, painting a picture of a surprisingly globalized ancient world, with Meroë sitting at one of its most important crossroads. As the sun finally crests the horizon, flooding the market square with golden light, the place is transformed. The sleepy, quiet square is now a bustling, vibrant hub of commerce. The air filled with a dozen languages and the scent of 100 different goods. It's a powerful, tangible display of the kingdom's reach, a living map of the economic forces that allowed the Kandakes to build their temples, command their armies, and negotiate with emperors as equals. Asterisk. Leaving the now teeming market behind, you duck down a narrow, sun-drenched alley, seeking a quieter side of the city. The noise of the central square fades, replaced by the more intimate sounds of domestic life. Here, away from the grand avenues and public monuments, you can feel the true rhythm of Meroë. The street is barely wide enough for two people to pass comfortably. The walls of the houses on either side are close enough to touch, their mud brick surfaces warm and slightly crumbly. Most of the homes are modest, single-story structures, but some have a second floor with a wooden balcony, where laundry is hanging out to dry simple lengths of undyed linen and cotton cloth, fluttering in the gentle breeze. Asterisk, you pass an open doorway and instinctively glance inside. You see a small, shady courtyard, the heart of a typical Meroë home. A woman is kneeling on the ground, using a smooth, rounded stone to grind sorghum grain into flour on a larger, saddle-shaped quern. The rhythmic, scraping sound is one you've heard all over the city, a constant, soothing backdrop to daily life. Sorghum, a hardy grain, well-suited to the hot climate and seasonal rains, was a staple of the Kushite diet. This is a widely accepted historical fact, a dietary cornerstone that, along with millet and barley, fed the population. The flour she is making will be mixed with water to create a thick paste, which is then fermented to make a sour, nutritious porridge or a thick flatbread baked on a hot clay griddle. It's the simple, hearty food that has sustained generations. Asterisk, in a corner of the courtyard, two small, naked children are playing a game with painted pebbles, their quiet chatter punctuated by giggles. An older man sits in the shade of a small fig tree, mending a fishing net, his fingers moving with a slow, practiced patience that speaks of a lifetime of such work. The scene is one of peaceful, domestic industry. It's a powerful reminder that history isn't just about kings, queens, and battles. It's about the countless unrecorded lives of ordinary people. The silent majority who built the city, farmed the land, and raised the next generation. Asterisk, as you continue your walk, you notice the distinct roundhouses nestled among the more common rectangular ones. These are built from a frame of bent wood, plastered with a thick layer of mud and dung, and topped with a conical roof of thatched grass. This architectural style is a lesser-known detail that highlights the indigenous African roots of Kushite culture. These structures, common throughout the savanna regions of Africa, are perfectly adapted to the environment. The thick mud walls provide excellent insulation from the heat, while the steep thatch roof allows the heavy summer rains to run off quickly. The coexistence of these roundhouses with the Egyptian-style flat-roofed buildings shows, once again, that Meroë was not a pale imitation of Egypt, but a true cultural melting pot, where different traditions lived side by side. You can almost imagine a playful, neighborly debate. My flat roof is perfect for sleeping on during hot nights, met with, perhaps, but your house will leak like a sieve when the rains come. Asterisk, the alley opens into a small, dusty square, where a well has been dug. A group of women are gathered there, filling large, round-bottomed clay jars with water. They chat and laugh as they work, balancing the heavy jars effortlessly on their heads for the walk home. The well is clearly a social hub, a place to exchange news, share gossip, and offer support. It's a scene that could be taking place in countless villages across the world today, a timeless tableau of community. Historians still wonder about the specific roles of men and women in ordinary Meroë households, while elite women like the Kandakes and their court clearly held immense power and status. Was this reflected in the lives of common women? The prevalence of women in these public, social spaces, the well, the market, the doorways of their homes suggests they enjoyed a degree of freedom and visibility not always common in the ancient world. But did they own property? Could they run their own businesses? The archaeological evidence is sparse, leaving us with a picture that is tantalizingly incomplete. Asterisk, you find a shady spot to sit for a moment, just observing the gentle flow of life. A potter walks past, his hands in tunic, covered in reddish-brown clay. A baker carries a large wooden tray of freshly baked flatbreads on his head. the warm, yeasty smell making your stomach rumble. Feeling the growing intensity of the midday sun, you turn down another shaded alley, seeking refuge from the heat. The walls here are taller, the shadows deeper. You find yourself in a quieter, more scholarly part of the city, perhaps near a temple complex or an administrative building. The sounds of commerce and domestic life have faded away, replaced by a deep, respectful silence. It is here that you come across it. A tall rectangular stone slab, a stele, set upright in a small walled enclosure. It's covered from top to bottom with beautiful, elegant symbols, carved with incredible precision into the dark sandstone. You've seen this writing before on the temple walls, on the official's clay tablet, but here, up close, you can truly appreciate its unique beauty. This is the Meroë script. Asterisk, you run your eyes over the characters. It's a mesmerizing and slightly baffling sight. There are two distinct forms of the script on the stele. One is hieroglyphic, clearly derived from the Egyptian system. You can recognize a few symbols: an owl, a reed, a wavy line for water, but they are used in a way that feels different, rearranged into a new and unfamiliar grammar. Many of the symbols are entirely unique to Meroë, including stylized figures and geometric shapes that have no Egyptian counterpart. This is the monumental script, used for formal inscriptions on temples and royal steles, like this one. It's beautiful, formal, and deeply intimidating. Asterisk, lower down on the stone, the script changes. The formal, pictorial hieroglyphs give way to a flowing, cursive style of writing. The characters are simpler, more abstract, linked together in a graceful, almost modern-looking script. This is the Meroë cursive, the form used for everyday records, letters, and administrative documents. It looks much more practical. Designed to be written quickly with a brush and ink on papyrus or astraca shards of pottery used as ancient notepad. The fact that the Kushites developed their own unique writing system is a testament to their cultural independence. A clear and deliberate break from the centuries of Egyptian influence. This is a widely accepted historical fact. By the 2nd century BCE, the Meroë script had completely replaced Egyptian hieroglyphs for all official and private use in the kingdom. Asterisk, you lean closer, tracing one of the lines of cursive with your finger, careful not to touch the stone. The great, frustrating mystery of this script is that while we can read it, we can't understand it. This is a truly quirky and fascinating detail of Kushite history, thanks to the work of the British Egyptologist Francis Llewellyn Griffith in the early 20th century. The Meroë script was deciphered in the sense that we know the phonetic value of each of its 23 signs. It's an alphabetic system, not a complex logographic one like Egyptian hieroglyphs, which should make it much easier to translate. We can sound out the words. We know the names of their kings and queens Amanirenas, Natakamani, Amanitore. We can read the names of their gods, like Apedmak and Amen. We can even recognize the boilerplate phrases in their funerary inscriptions. Formulas that seem to mean something like, "O Isis, O Osiris, may the deceased have a good meal." Asterisk, but beyond that, we're mostly lost. The problem is that the Meroë language itself is an isolate. It appears to be unrelated to any other known language, ancient or modern. It's not related to ancient Egyptian, or to the Semitic languages, or to the modern Nubian languages spoken in the area today. Without a Rosetta Stone, a parallel text, written in both Meroïc and a known language like Greek or Egypt, are left with the frustrating task of trying to decode a language with no dictionary and no relatives. They can make educated guesses based on context. If a word appears frequently in temple inscriptions, it might be the word for temple, or god, or offering, but they can't be sure. The vast majority of the 1,000+ Meroïc texts that have been discovered remain untranslated. Asterisk, so, as you stand before this stele, you are looking at a library of locked books. What stories does this stone tell? Is it a record of a great military victory? A decree from a Kandake concerning trade regulations? A hymn to a god? Or is it something more mundane? A detailed record of land ownership, or a list of taxes paid by a local farmer? Historians and linguists still wonder if a breakthrough will ever come. Will a bilingual inscription be discovered one day in the sands of Sudan? Or will advances in computational linguistics and artificial intelligence be able to find patterns and connections that have eluded human researchers for over a century? It's a profound and humbling thought. The people of Meroë are speaking to us across 2,000 years, their voices frozen in stone, and we can hear the sounds they made, but cannot understand their words. The elegant script seems to mock you with its silent, beautiful secrets. You feel like a traveler trying to ask for directions in a foreign land, holding a phrasebook that only tells you how to pronounce the words, not what they mean. The sun beats down, and the stone remains silent, holding the stories of a kingdom just beyond our reach. Asterisk. You pull yourself away from the silent, cryptic, steely, and continue your walk as the sun climbs towards its zenith. The heat is now a physical presence, radiating up from the stone-paved streets and shimmering in the air. Most sensible residents of Meroë are now indoors, seeking refuge in the cool, dark interiors of their homes. The city has entered a state of midday slumber. You find yourself drawn towards a large, impressive structure that stands apart from the administrative buildings. It's a temple, but one that feels different from the Egyptian temples you might have imagined. Its entrance is flanked by the familiar, tall pylons, but the artwork carved into them is strikingly local. Asterisk. This is the Temple of Apep, a place of worship dedicated to the most important indigenous god of the Meroic pantheon. Apep was a warrior god, a god of victory and sustenance, and he was a uniquely Kushite creation, while the Kushites also worshipped. Egyptian gods like Amen and Isissa practiced that, stretched back for prominence of Apep in the Meroitic period was a clear statement of cultural and religious identity. This is a widely accepted historical fact. The rise of the cult of Apep coincided with Meroë's shift away from Egyptian influence, a theological declaration of independence. He was their god, born of their land. Asterisk. The most striking thing about Apep is his form. He is most often depicted as a man with the head of a lion, a powerful and intimidating image. On the main pylon of the temple, you see a massive relief of a Kandake and her queen, both making offerings to the lion-headed god. Apep is shown with a powerful, muscular human body, but his leonine head is fierce, with bared teeth and an intense gaze. Lions were a potent symbol of power and royalty across the ancient world. But here, in the African savanna, where they were a real and present danger, the symbolism was even more immediate. Apep represented both the wild, untamable power of the natural world and the king's ability to harness that power to protect his people. Asterisk. You step through the pylon gateway into the first courtyard of the temple. The sudden shade is a welcome relief. The courtyard is open to the sky, surrounded by a colonnade of thick sandstone pillars. The silence in here is profound, broken only by the soft cooing of a dove perched high on a capital. The carvings on the interior walls are even more fascinating. Here, you see Apep in his most unusual and slightly bizarre form. A lesser-known detail about his iconography is that he is sometimes depicted with 3 lion heads and 4 human arms. A strange, almost subcontinental-looking deity. In another relief, his torso emerges from the twisting body of a giant serpent, which in turn sprouts from a lotus flower. It's a complex syncretic image that scholars are still trying to fully unpack. It seems to blend local African concepts of divinity with motifs borrowed from Egypt and perhaps even further afield. Asterisk. These strange depictions raise so many questions. What did this composite imagery mean to the people who worshipped here? Was the 3-headed form meant to represent the god's ability to see in all directions, a symbol of his omniscience? Or did it represent a trinity of different divine aspects? Historians and theologians still wonder about the exact nature of Aped-Mac's cult. Was he a state god, whose worship was primarily for the benefit of the royal family? Or did he have a personal, devotional following among the common people? The presence of smaller, humbler Aped-Mac shrines found throughout the city suggests that his appeal was widespread. He wasn't just the god of kings and queens. He was a protector who could be called upon by anyone. You walk deeper into the temple, moving from the bright courtyard into the darker, more mysterious inner sanctum. The air grows cooler and smells of old stone and faint, lingering incense. The only light here comes from narrow slits high in the ceiling, sending down shafts of dusty sunlight that illuminate the reliefs on the walls. Here, in the Holy of Holies, the reliefs show the Kandake and the king in direct communion with the god. He hands them symbols of long life and sovereignty, legitimizing their rule. You notice a relief depicting the god's consort, a goddess named Amosem. She, too, is a Kushite deity, often shown standing behind the queen, acting as her divine protector. The divine world of the Kushites mirrored their earthly one, with powerful goddesses standing shoulder-to-shoulder with their male counterparts. U. As the afternoon sun begins its slow descent, casting long, dramatic shadows across the city, you feel a pull to leave the bustling capital behind. The stories of the Kandakes, their power forged in iron and gold, are intrinsically linked to another, quieter place, the place of their eternal rest. You join a small, dusty caravan that is heading north, out of the city. There are no chariots or grand processions here, just a few merchants with their donkeys and a family returning to their village. The mood is calm and unhurried. The journey takes you away from the fertile strip of land along the river and out into the edge of the desert. The landscape changes almost immediately. The scattered acacia trees and scrubby bushes give way to a vast, open expanse of pale sand and dark, gravelly plains. The silence here is different from the silence of the temple. It's an immense, profound quiet that seems to absorb all sound. The only noises are the soft crunch of your footsteps on the sand, the gentle clopping of the donkey's hooves, and the faint, whispery sound of the wind blowing across the dunes. The heat is still intense, but it's a dry, clean heat, and the low-angled sun makes the colors of the desert incredibly vivid. The orange of the sand, the purple of the distant hills. You are heading towards the great necropolis, the royal cemetery of the Meroïdic kingdom. The main burial ground for the rulers of this era is not located within the city of Meroë itself, but several kilometers away on a series of low hills in the desert. This separation of the city of the living from the city of the dead is a common practice in the ancient world, a way of creating a sacred, liminal space for the transition to the afterlife. The journey itself feels like part of the ritual, a slow, meditative walk from the world of the living to the realm of the ancestors. The Kushite kings and queens had several royal cemeteries. The earliest rulers of the Napatan period, including the great pharaohs of the 25th dynasty who conquered Egypt, were buried at a site called El-Karub. Later, they moved to a new cemetery at Nubian, but a widely accepted historical fact is that when the capital shifted south to Meroë, the rulers established a new necropolis here, in the desert, just east of the city. This site, known today as the Meroë Royal Cemeteries, contains the tombs of more than 40 generations of Kushite royalty. It is a silent, sprawling city of the dead that mirrors the long history of the kingdom itself. As you walk, one of the merchants, a quiet man who has been watching you with gentle curiosity, points towards the horizon. At first, you see nothing but the shimmering heat haze, but as you squint, you begin to make out a series of small, sharp, triangular shapes breaking the clean line of the horizon. They look like a row of jagged teeth, or a collection of giant, discarded arrowheads sticking out of the sand. They are still miles away, but their distinctive silhouette is unmistakable. These are the pyramids of Meroë, Your pace quickens slightly, drawn forward by the strange and beautiful sight. The idea of pyramids in Sudan is a lesser-known fact for many people who associate these structures exclusively with Egypt. But the Kingdom of Kush was a prolific builder of pyramids. In fact, there are more pyramids in Sudan than there are in all of Egypt. It's a startling statistic. However, these are not the colossal structures of Giza. The Kushites developed their own unique style of pyramid, one that was just as much a symbol of their distinct identity as their script or their gods. The journey feels timeless. The sun continues to sink, and the air begins to cool. The silence of the desert envelops you, creating a sense of peaceful isolation. It's easy to see why they chose this place. It feels removed from the chaos and concerns of the mortal world, a place where one could contemplate eternity. Historians still wonder about the precise rituals that would have accompanied a royal funeral procession along this very path. Would it have been a somber, silent affair, or a loud procession with music and professional mourners, as was common in Egypt? What offerings would have been carried? What hymns would have been sung? The path you walk is worn smooth, a sign that it has been trod by countless such processions over nearly 1,000 years. Each step you take is a step over forgotten ceremonies and whispered prayers. The pyramids on the horizon grow steadily larger, their sharp angles becoming clearer, their reddish-brown stone glowing warmly in the late afternoon light. The anticipation builds, not with a sense of dread or morbidity, but with a feeling of profound curiosity and reverence for this final, quiet chapter in the story of the Kandakes. You crest a low, sandy ridge, and the full panorama of the necropolis opens up before you. The sight is breathtaking and strangely beautiful. Spread across the rolling desert hills is a dense concentration of pyramids, a veritable forest of stone peaks pointing towards the sky. There are dozens of them, clustered together in groups, some nearly perfect, others partially collapsed into mounds of rubble, their sharp lines softened by centuries of wind and sand. They are much smaller and far steeper than the famous pyramids of Giza, creating a completely different visual effect. It's not the overwhelming monolithic power of the Egyptian pyramids. It's something more elegant, more numerous, a collective statement of dynastic continuity rather than individual, godlike might. You walk down from the ridge and begin to move among them. The scale becomes more personal. The largest of the Meroitic pyramids stands only about 30 meters, or just under 100 feet, tall a fraction of the height of the Great Pyramid at Giza. Their bases are tiny in comparison, perhaps only 8 to 10 meters on each side. This small footprint forces the sides to rise at a sharp, acute angle, typically between 68 and 73 degrees, giving them their distinctive, needle-like appearance. A widely accepted historical fact is that this style was a deliberate revival of a much older form of private pyramid construction from Egypt's New Kingdom, but adapted and exaggerated to create a uniquely Kushite aesthetic. They weren't trying to copy Giza. They were referencing a different, more ancient tradition and making it their own. The pyramids are constructed from local sandstone blocks, their reddish-brown color glowing with an intense, warm light in the late afternoon. The stone surfaces are not smooth, but have a stepped appearance, created by the receding courses of masonry. On many of the pyramids, the capstone, or pyramidion, is still in place. A single pointed block that once would have been covered in polished gold or bronze to catch the first and last rays of the sun. You can imagine how this field of tombs must have looked in its prime. A dazzling spectacle of dozens of glittering points of light in the vast, empty desert. As you wander through this silent city, you notice that the pyramids are not identical. They vary in size, state of preservation, and in the small details of their construction. Some are so weathered that they look more like natural rock formations, while others retain their sharp, geometric purity. This variation speaks to the long history of the site, which was in use for nearly 1,000 years. From around 720 BCE to 350 CE, It also hints at the fluctuating fortunes of the kingdom. The larger, more finely constructed pyramids likely belong to the most powerful and prosperous rulers, while the smaller, cruder ones may have been built during times of economic hardship or political instability. A lesser-known and rather curious detail is what's missing. In the 1830s, an Italian treasure hunter and self-proclaimed explorer named Giuseppe Ferlini made his way to Meroë, convinced that the pyramids must contain vast hoards of gold in their centers. As the Egyptian ones were rumored to, he began a campaign of systematic destruction. He started at the top of one of the largest pyramids, belonging to the great Kandake of Kush, and began tearing it down from the top. He found no central chamber. Unlike Egyptian pyramids, the burial chambers of the Meroitic pyramids were not located within the superstructure itself, but were dug deep into the bedrock beneath it. Ferlini, however, in his destructive ignorance, eventually stumbled upon the queen's funerary goods, which had been buried near the top of the pyramid. The treasure he found was fabulous, a vast collection of gold rings, bracelets, and necklaces. Tragically, believing this was the standard, he proceeded to dynamite the tops off several other pyramids, finding nothing and causing irreparable damage to these unique monuments. It's a sad, cringe-worthy footnote in their history, a stark reminder of the destructive greed that so often accompanies the discovery of ancient sites. You pause and look out over the field of tombs, a mix of awe and melancholy. The setting sun is now casting impossibly long shadows from the pyramids, stretching like dark fingers across the orange sand. The silence is absolute. There is no wind, no sound of life. It's a place of profound peace. Historians still wonder about the specific astronomical alignments of the necropolis. Were the pyramids positioned to align with certain stars or constellations? Perhaps the circumpolar stars that never set, symbolizing eternity? Or was the layout more practical, with each new ruler simply adding their tomb to the family plot? The density of the pyramids suggests a desire for proximity, a wish for the rulers to remain together in death as they were in life. A silent dynasty holding court in the desert for all time. You feel like a trespasser in a sacred, sleeping city, and you lower your gaze, walking softly as you move towards one particularly well-preserved tomb. Your attention is drawn to a single pyramid, not the largest, but one of the most complete. It stands on a low plinth, its lines still sharp against the deepening twilight sky. The sandstone blocks are a rich, dark red, and you can see traces of the original white plaster that would have once covered the entire structure, making it gleam like a beacon in the desert sun. This tomb, you imagine, belongs to one of the great Kandakes, a ruler like Amenirinos, or her successor, Amenishah. It feels right that your journey, which began with the stories of their power, should lead you to the place of their eternal legacy. Asterisk. The most fascinating feature of the Meroitic pyramid is not the stone superstructure itself, but the small, elegant building attached to its eastern face. This is a funerary offering chapel, a distinctly Kushite innovation. While Old Kingdom Egyptian pyramids had large complex mortuary temples, the Meroitic design integrated a much smaller, more intimate chapel directly into the monument. It's a tiny rectangular building with a pylon-style entrance and a roof that would have been a vaulted arch. It was here, not inside the pyramid, that priests would have come to perform the daily rituals and leave offerings of food, drink, and incense for the soul of the deceased ruler. It was the public face of the tomb, the portal between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. Asterisk. You step closer to this chapel, your feet sinking slightly into the soft sand that has collected at its base. The front pylon is covered in beautifully carved reliefs, and even in the fading light, the details are remarkably clear. This is where the story of the Queen's power is immortalized. The main scene, a widely accepted and iconic feature of Kushite royal art, depicts the Kandake in a triumphant pose. She is shown as a massive, powerful figure, holding a group of terrified captives by the hair with one hand. In her other hand, she raises a weapon or club or an axe ready to smite them. It's a classic pharaonic motif, the king as the victorious warrior. But here it is the queen who wields this ultimate symbol of authority. Her face is serene and determined, her body strong and imposing, a mirror of the depictions you saw back in Meroë. It was a clear and unambiguous statement. The Kandakes' power was absolute, both in life and in death. Asterisk, you examine the details of her attire. She wears the royal Kushite regalia, a close-fitting cap crown adorned with multiple Uriatha-stylized cobras, symbolizing royalty, and a long, sheer robe that reveals the powerful contours of her body. Her jewelry is elaborate, with heavy earrings, a broad collar, and thick bracelets. Behind her, often depicted on a smaller scale, stands a prince or another official, a clear visual reinforcement of her superior status. This imagery was meant to be seen, a public declaration of the enduring power of the dynasty and the queen's crucial role within it. Asterisk. As you run your eyes over the other reliefs on the chapel walls, you notice a lesser-known and more intimate detail. In addition to the grand scenes of smiting enemies, there are also quieter, more personal images. You see the Kandakes seated on a throne, receiving offerings. She is shown being suckled by a goddess, a powerful symbol of her divine legitimacy and her connection to the mother goddesses of the pantheon. In another scene, she is depicted in the embrace of a god who offers her the ankh, the symbol of life. These scenes are not about earthly power and military might. They are about her personal journey into the afterlife, her transformation into a divine being, an Osiris. Asterisk, the sheer density of the artwork is incredible. Every available surface of the chapel is covered in these intricate reliefs and lines of Meroitic hieroglyphs, telling a story for those who could read it. Historians still wonder about the audience for these chapels. Were they only accessible to the priesthood, or on certain festival days, could ordinary Kushites approach the chapel to pay their respects and leave their own small offerings? The location, in the open desert, suggests a degree of public access, turning the entire necropolis into a kind of national monument, a place where the collective memory and identity of the kingdom were reinforced. As a final sliver of sun disappears below the horizon, the sky explodes into a brilliant display of purple and orange. The reliefs on the chapel wall lose their sharp detail, becoming dark silhouettes against the glowing sky. It's time to take the final step, to move from the outer world to the inner sanctum. The entrance to the chapel is a low, dark doorway, an invitation into the heart of the Queen's eternal home. Asterisk. You have to duck your head to enter the low doorway of the offering chapel. The transition is immediate and profound. The vast, open expanse of the desert is replaced by a small, enclosed, and deeply intimate space. The air inside is still and cool, carrying the faint, dry scent of ancient stone and dust. It takes a moment for your eyes to adjust to the near darkness. The only light comes from the doorway you just entered, casting a soft, rectangular patch of glowing twilight onto the floor. The chapel is tiny, no larger than a small bedroom, and the silence is absolute, a heavy, velvety quiet that feels ancient and sacred. Asterisk, as your vision clears, you see that the interior walls are completely covered in paintings. The reliefs you saw on the outside were for public statements, but this space was for the eternal and the divine. The colors are faded now, muted by the passage of 2,000 years, but they are still visible: soft ochre reds, pale yellows, chalky whites, and deep carbon blacks. The effect is not grand or overwhelming, but gentle and deeply personal. You feel as though you have stepped into the Queen's private thoughts about eternity. Asterisk, you are surrounded by the cast of her afterlife. The paintings depict the Kandakes' journey after death, a visual guide to the path her soul, or Ba, would take. On one wall, you see the funeral procession itself, Small figures are shown carrying the queen's sarcophagus, followed by mourners with their arms raised in lament. Priests walk ahead, wafting incense from ornate censers. It's a silent, moving echo of the real procession that would have taken place along the desert path you just walked. Asterisk on the opposite wall. The queen stands before the gods of the underworld. You recognize the familiar figure of Osiris, the Egyptian god of the dead, seated on his throne, holding the crook and flail. Before him, the queen is led by a jackal-headed Anubis. This is a widely accepted fact, despite their strong, independent culture. The Kushites retained a deep-seated belief in the Egyptian funerary cult, and the promise of resurrection offered by the Osiris myth. They saw no contradiction in worshipping their own god, Apedmok, in life, while trusting their souls to the care of the Egyptian pantheon in death. It was a pragmatic approach to spirituality, taking the best of what both cultures had to offer for a complete eternal portfolio. Asterisk, you lean closer to a section of the wall, examining a scene that is a lesser-known, more syncretic element of Kushite belief. Here, the queen is not depicted in the typical Egyptian style. She is shown with her full, powerful figure, her dark skin, and her distinctly Kushite facial features and jewelry. She is not a generic soul. She is unequivocally the Kandake, retaining her unique identity, even in the presence of the gods. The gods, too, are sometimes depicted with Kushite features. It's a subtle but powerful act of appropriation, a reimagining of the Egyptian afterlife to make it their own. The message is clear. The queen does not enter the underworld as a mere subject of the Egyptian gods, but as a fellow royal, a monarch, meeting her peers. Asterisk, the ceiling above you is painted a deep blue, dotted with a constellation of small, five-pointed yellow stars. It represents the sky of the underworld, the eternal night through which the sun god Ra travels in his bark. You trace the faded lines of a winged vulture, the goddess Nekbet, her wings spread protectively over the entire scene. It's a comforting image, a promise of divine protection on a perilous journey. Historians still debate the full meaning of some of the imagery in these chapels. Unique combinations of gods appear, and symbols are used in ways that don't quite match either Egyptian or Kushite conventions. Are these representations of lost myths, local variations of well-known stories, or even theological concepts for which we have no written explanation, their meaning locked away in the undeciphered Meroitic script? Asterisk, standing in the center of this small, sacred space, you feel an overwhelming sense of peace. The paintings aren't meant to be frightening or morbid. They are a statement of profound faith, a beautifully illustrated roadmap designed to reassure and guide the soul on its most important journey. They speak of a belief in an eternal cycle, in a life that continues beyond the confines of the tomb. You are not standing in a crypt, but in a waiting room, a beautifully decorated departure lounge for eternity. The last of the light fades from the doorway, and the chapel is plunged into near-total darkness. You are left alone with the silent, painted figures, enveloped in the cool, quiet embrace of the Queen's final legacy, a silent witness to her eternal story. You step back out of the chapel's low doorway, emerging from the cool, dark interior into the vastness of the desert night. The change is startling. The world has been transformed. The last fiery vestiges of sunset are gone, and the sky above is a breathtaking dome of pure, undiluted starlight, with no city lights to wash them out. The stars are almost terrifyingly bright and numerous. The Milky Way is a luminous milky river stretching from horizon to horizon, so dense with stars it looks like spilled sugar. The air is cool and still, and the silence is so complete you can almost hear the ringing in your own ears. Asterisk. You find a comfortable spot to sit in the soft sand at the base of the pyramid, leaning your back against the cool, solid sandstone blocks of the chapel. The stone seems to hum with the weight of its own history, a silent repository of the stories and rituals it has witnessed. From this vantage point, you can see the entire necropolis laid out before you. A ghostly city of dark, triangular silhouettes against the star-dusted sky. The sharp angles of the pyramids seem to soften in the darkness, looking less like monuments and more like a natural part of the desert landscape. A mountain range in miniature. Asterisk, you watch as the moon, a slender silver crescent, begins to rise in the east, casting a pale, ethereal light over the scene. The shadows it creates are soft and blurry, a gentle contrast to the sharp, dark shadows of the sun. The moonlight catches the edges of the pyramids, tracing their outlines in faint silver. The world is reduced to a simple, beautiful palette of black, gray, and silver. It is profoundly peaceful. There is no wind, no movement, just the slow, silent turning of the cosmos above this field of sleeping monarchs. Asterisk, this final quiet moment is a time for reflection. Your journey has taken you from the bustling, life-giving waters of the Nile to the silent, arid heart of the desert. You have walked through the smoky, industrious streets of Meroë, stood in the shadow of the Kandakes royal court, and traced the beautiful, cryptic lines of a language we can no longer understand. You have seen a kingdom that was a true crossroads of culture, a place that looked north to Egypt and the Mediterranean, but also south and east to the heart of Africa and beyond. This is a widely accepted historical fact. The Kingdom of Kush was one of the great civilizations of the ancient world, a powerful and sophisticated society that endured for over 1,000 years, leaving behind a legacy that is as unique as it is beautiful. Asterisk, sitting here, in the quiet company of the pyramids, you think about the Kandake. These women were not footnotes in a king's story. They were the story itself. They were rulers, builders, warriors, and diplomats. They were mothers of a dynasty, the living embodiment of their kingdom's power and legitimacy. A final, lesser-known detail to ponder is the end of their kingdom. Around 350 CE, the city of Meroë was sacked and burned, likely by the neighboring kingdom of Axum in modern-day Ethiopia. The Meroitic kingdom collapsed. The script fell out of use, and the knowledge of their culture faded into the sand. For centuries, their story was almost completely forgotten, known only through the biased accounts of their Roman and Greek neighbors. Asterisk. It's only in the last century or so that archaeology has begun to peel back the layers of sand and time, allowing the Kushites to speak for themselves again. Even if we can't fully understand their words, historians still wonder about the specifics of this collapse. Was it a sudden, catastrophic event, or a slow decline? What happened to the people of Meroë after their city fell? Did they scatter, their culture dissolving into the surrounding populations? Or did they migrate and form new communities, the seeds of the medieval Nubian kingdoms that would rise centuries later? The end of their story is as mysterious as its beginning. Asterisk, you look up at the pyramid behind you, a silent monument to a powerful queen whose name may or may not be known, whose story is only partially told, but the pyramid itself is a testament. It stands, it endures, it tells a story of power, faith, and a belief in eternity that is so strong it can be felt in the very stones. The moon climbs higher, a silent lantern in the vast, quiet night. You feel the deep peace of the desert settle over you, a sense of perspective that only such a vast and ancient place can provide. Your journey is over. You have followed the story of the Kandakes from their seat of power to their place of rest. And now, all that is left is to sit, and to watch, and to be still. Asterisk, the quiet of the desert night deepens around you, wrapping you in a soft blanket of silence. The stars, which were so startlingly bright just a moment ago, now seem gentle and familiar, old friends in the vast, dark sky. The cool sand beneath you is soft and comforting, and the ancient stone at your back feels solid and reassuring, a steady presence in the quiet of the world. Asterisk, let your breathing slow down, matching the calm, unhurried rhythm of the desert. Breathe in the cool, clean air. And as you breathe out, feel the last of the day's tension release from your shoulders, from your mind. There is nothing left to do now, nothing to see, nothing to figure out. The story is told. The journey is complete. The queens and kings are sleeping in their tombs, and the city of Meroë is resting under a blanket of stars. All that remains is this deep, profound peace. Asterisk, let the image of the silent pyramids hold in your mind for a moment there. Dark, steady shapes, a symbol of peaceful permanence against the gentle light of the moon. Feel the vastness of the space around you, the endless sand, and the infinite sky. And know that you are a small, quiet part of this immense and beautiful stillness. There are no more questions to ask, no more mysteries to solve. Just the soft moonlight, the cool air, and the deep, restful silence of a place that has been sleeping for thousands of years. Let that peace seep into you, slowing your thoughts, calming your heart, and guiding you gently into your own quiet rest. There is only stillness now, only sleep,